All right. Good evening, listeners, and thank you for joining us for week 6 of Can You Fix Nigeria Challenge Season 2. This week, I have with me Mr. Fisayo Alagbe. He's an engineering manager at Total Nigeria, has 20 plus years experience doing mainly in the area of instrumentation and automation. And I'm going to be speaking to him on the issue of technical and design standards within the NMPC, within our energy sector in Nigeria. Mr. Fisayo, it's good to have you tonight.
Thank you so much, Ade, and thanks so much for having me. Well done for the great job you're doing on this. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Tonight, I wanted to take your opinion, on where we are with technical design and technical standards in Nigeria. Okay, so let me give you a bit of a background on where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
So you know that NETCO is like the design, the EPC, the engineering, procurement, and construction arm of the NNPC. They should normally be responsible for design and standards within NNPC. Yeah, but for me, I'm not sure, how do you rate their performance over the last 40 years? Where are we with design standards in engineering across the oil and gas or energy sector in Nigeria, in your opinion?
Okay, that's a very good question because it's something that we discuss from time to time. And let me first of all try and see if I can lay the foundation so that we're all on the same page, right? So we talk about standards. So what's actually the standard? So we need to look at standards. We need to look at code of practice. We need to look at specification so that we can all align on what we are discussing actually. So when we say standard, technical standard, this is just these are guidelines, procedures that are documented that helps us to know how to do things, how to manufacture things, or how to go about executing processes in the best way it can be done, right? So you follow these guidelines, you follow these procedures, you will be able to produce quality documents or quality products that will be fit for purpose. Then we can also look at code of practice, which tells you what you need to do. So like I said, standard is how to do things. Code tells you what you need to do to ensure the quality and safety of that product or the processes. Why you then look at specifications, which now goes into ensuring you have specific information within your standards that you send to your supplier or manufacturer to give you a specific item. So for instance, you are buying a car, you're buying a Mercedes-Benz. So there's a standard which will normally say, okay, this is a standard Mercedes-Benz. But you can wake up to say, okay, I want adaptive life control. I want, when I'm running through a bend, I want my lights to be following the bend and all of that. You are now specifying some specific details that you want the manufacturer to add onto it. So we're talking of specifications now. So going back to your question regarding the standards in Nigeria, yes, sometimes we do assume that we don't have standards in Nigeria. I beg to differ a bit.
Okay.
We do have standards. Yes. Standards Organization of Nigeria has technical committees that develop standards for different categories. But the question is whether they've developed enough for all the categories in the oil and gas industry is a question that begs for an answer, right? And one thing they also do is they have relationship with international organizations and standards producing organizations like ISO and SAI. They have relationship with them. And what they do is they can refer you to some specific standards So that's what they've got on their website. And also, they do adopt some of these standards. So for instance, in 2019, ISO adopted some API standards in America. They adopted about 10 of them. So for instance, we have the one I use very well, API RP554 for instrumentation and control. They adopted it. So what they did was to rechristen it or rename it as NIS 554. So Nigeria Industry Standard 554. Yes. So if you look at API 50, for instance, they adopted it. You would then see NIS 50, which is for the gas processing facilities. So we do have, and if you visit the standardslawnigeria.com, you will see a lot of categories and standards. But whether we have enough to address some of our challenges is something that is difficult to answer. I go through their websites. I'm not sure we have enough.
I see.
One thing again is if you go to standard organization, they've got library, they've got online library. And they have, according to them, they have over 3,000 standards in that online library. But I've not been able to access it for quite a long time. But I think if one visits their office physically, yes, maybe one will be able to. Of course, they sell the standards as well. So if one visits physically, one will be able to get some of those standards. So that's to answer the question whether we have standards or not.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. Because see, let me give a bit of a perspective on why I asked that question. Sometimes last year, when Babatunde Fashola was Minister of Works, somebody asked him about how we were doing. Why is it that our roads were collapsing so quickly? And why is it that it takes us such a long time to finish our roads, for example? And he was saying to the guys, he said, look, normally, before you even start constructing a road, you would take 1 year or 1.5 years to do a FEED, to do a design of that road. Do you understand? And you and I understand that because normally it takes us 1 year, 1.5 years to do a FEED before you even start constructing a road. There's a specification on how much we should compact the soil under this road, the width of the road, what's the thickness of the base, should we do geotechnical services? All of this information are based on standards. So, but my question is, and I think you've answered part of my question, but I still want to just ask you there. Why is it that we find it difficult? Because there are so many roads that are collapsing. Right now, the current Minister of Works is now insisting that everybody should do concrete road. Now, concrete road, in my view, is good, but it's not necessary if you have followed the original standard properly. Because if you have done the compaction properly, do you understand? You've compacted the place properly, maybe you don't need concrete road, in which case it will be cheaper for you. So this is why I'm asking that question, that, look, one, do we have the standards? Okay, if we have the standards, why are we finding it difficult to follow it normally? Because,
So, yes, just a bit of what you mentioned about construction. We have code of construction in Nigeria, which should be act of law. So if you do a road and you don't follow such a code, you should be, you are liable, ideally. But the problem for me also lies the same thing we face everywhere, where we don't enforce the law. So if you do something, whether you've done it according to the standard or code of practice, nobody, maybe most people don't check. So that's why you can build a road and the next few months is falling apart. Yes, I totally agree that concrete road will last for like 45 years, which is excellent. But the question is, if you don't do it well, if you don't follow the standards, it will not last. So the most important thing is, you know, there's always this saying, when things are not working or when things are going wrong, they will say, are there no standards? They say that a lot, you know, and the problem is they are not enforced. Even if we don't have standards, you can, when you write the specification, user requirement specification to say, I want to construct a road from point A to point B, you write so what I'm trying to say is contractors don't just wake up and say they are constructing road. We must have written scope of work. We must have done call for tender, and they have user requirements saying this is what we want to do. Within that user requirement and scope of work, we must have specified the standards and codes of construction they are meant to use, even if you have to specify foreign standards. The problem with such is standards are meant to be tailored to your environment in that kind of application, right? The geotech situation in Port Harcourt is not the same as in Maiduguri. So the requirement will not exactly be the same. So that's the more important, where the scope of work must be well written, and you must specify what standards that constructor needs to follow. Then that has to be followed and enforced. You have to inspect and ensure it has been done in accordance to the standards. So that's where I have concern, whether we ensure that the contractors are doing it to standard.
Okay.
So that applies to oil and gas as well.
All right. In fact, that was going to be my next question. So now let's bring it home to the oil and gas industry. I'll tell you one thing that always rises me a little. So you and I know that we've been doing oil in Nigeria since 1956. So we've got at least almost 60 years or 70 years of doing oil in Nigeria. Countries that came after us, say Norway, they started in the 1970s. You know, if you go to Norway, they have the NOSOC standards, and all their jobs are clear. It's very clear. You go to the UK, they have HSC. You know, so each of these countries have a standard, and they're delivering projects. But what worries me is that if you come to Nigeria now, I'm not aware that we have a credible EPC contractor that is local. I'm not convinced that we have a credible, and please feel free to correct me, I could be wrong, but I'm not sure that we have a credible EPC contractor or a design consultant that if you wanted to do a $5 billion job in Nigeria, you will give that job to. Netco might be one of our best as a subsidiary of the NNPC, but even they, I'm not aware that they've actually done a big job that we could say that, why is this so? Why is this so? We have many projects that are coming up in Nigeria. Nigeria Train 7, that's gone to Technimont. We're talking Bonga Southwest, Asasa. I mean, there's so many projects, but we are not able to do any of that here because it seems that we have not developed the capability in-house. Why is this so? Fisayo, can you hear me? I think I might have lost you for a second there. Can you
That's
hear
a big
me?
one. It's the same reason why. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. Please go ahead.
Okay. So I said it's the same problem why our economic is not growing. It's the same reason why we don't have power supply in the country. It's the same reason why we don't have water running in our homes. We don't have good roads. So it will be difficult to actually isolate oil and gas from this problem. And it's the same thing with the mining industry, you know. Yes, so it might be difficult for us to be able to actually design some of these big projects by ourselves or alone, because we have not actually grown to that extent.
But why?
So look at the quality of our education.
But why, Fisayo?
Look at the quality of our education.
Okay. Okay. Hello, Fisayo, can you hear me?
So look at the quality of our education. Very good engineers, and I'm going to it. Yes, I can. I think there's a glitch. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Please go ahead, sir.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Please go ahead.
Okay, I think there was a glitch. So I was saying is the same problem we've got in the mining industry, in our economics, in our academics. If you don't produce very good and quality engineers, it will be difficult for you to have people learning and designing this type of big projects. We've got, we are all in this, maybe about 20 years ago, we started doing feed in Nigeria, and we have a number of EPCI companies, and you realize that a lot of them started doing well. But the problem is continue to do engineering design consistently for a number of years. They probably won't retain that competence and they won't retain that knowledge to be able to grow. So it's either maybe they win a job, do it over 2 years, and that's all. Then they will wait for maybe another 2 big projects. Have about a good number of them running consistently with these local guys for over a period of 20, 30 years. I think we will develop the competence, but I don't think we have that kind of project running over and over a period of time for us to develop the competence. Another challenge is, you see, the impact on this is if you don't sustain it, you bring in people to do some work. Once they finish the work, they learn and they leave. They leave for abroad. They leave for maybe the IOCs and all of that. Then you lose the competence you've built. So when you have another job, you start all over again. And that is the more reason why I also give it to a company like Netco, because Netco has been in the business for long and they've built a lot of people. And we must give it to them in terms of human capacity building. Because I've met a lot of people while working in the UK, a lot of engineers, and you find out that most of them at one time or the other have actually been trained and passed through Netco. In fact, recently we were trying to develop an in-house training for some young, and one of the assist. When I get home, I will look back into my document and pull out some of my notes in Netco, because we all had a structured training program in Netco. So I think they've done well, but however, we need to have projects running consistently. If you look at Aberdeen today have a lot of companies that are doing a lot of brownfield activities, very competent companies. I believe the American brought this business to Aberdeen. Right?
Correct.
But yes,
they took it to Norway as well.
Yes, they took it over, they honed it, and they built it up. So for me, I believe if we continue to have a lot of projects running consistently, we will grow.
I agree with you on that. Actually, I agree with you that basically you need about 10 years or so, or 15 years, 20 years to build that consistency. And there's not enough projects to go around the number of EPICs that we have. I agree with you. But if that's the case, that all of us know that, why can't the NNPC then ensure that whatever project we get, a part of it is deliberately given to Netco? Now, good thing was that under President Jonathan, we had these local content laws that came into Nigeria, where we must do some of our work here. Do you understand? I'm just thinking that, is it not possible that we should insist that by law, a certain percentage of the work that we do must be done by Netco or a competent local contractor so that we can build that capacity?
I totally agree with you, but it's also important to know that a lot of designs are also done locally. There are a lot of marginal fields, a lot of small projects here and there that are done locally. Yes, locally. I can attest to. Yes, I can attest to that. So these EPCI companies are actually growing. But however, what you said is the best. And if you have a big job, if there is an act or law that will force a good part of that job, if not everything, to be done locally. It's all right to make mistakes, right?
Yes, it is.
It's all right to make mistakes, and then we correct it.
You learn
and
from
then
it.
Once we correct it, we learn from it. And that Rex will carry it into return of experience, we carry into another project, and most likely will not make such mistakes anymore. So I totally agree. There must be a way to enforce that most of these activities, most of these designs are done in Nigeria. And I believe if we do that, all these resources, all these experienced individuals that we are losing to abroad in the so-called Japa syndrome, I believe that will reduce a bit. That's also impacting in industry a lot. Once people learn, they understand how to do the work, they go out there and get better rates outside the country. And that's happening every now and then. So we need to be able to retain that within the country. Yeah, I totally agree.
Let me ask you another question. So at the moment, if you look at one of the biggest problems we have in the energy sector in Nigeria is this pipeline vandalization, explosions, spill, environmental issues, those kind of things, Now, is this related to this design standard issue? Let me tell you why I'm asking this question. So when I look at, I mean, a lot of our pipelines are above ground. They are on the surface. They are relatively easy to access. Do you understand? There's no leak detection systems on them. There's no those kind of things. Whereas if you go to other countries that run pipelines, yeah, there are standards on how to build a bond around a pipeline to bury that pipeline. There's standards of how deep it should be. Most countries now have as a minimum a leak detection system on pipelines so that if your pipeline is leaking, immediately you can notify the control room. So my question to you then is this law or these standards, this weakness of our standard or non-application of our standard, does it have other impact in the industry or not? Is there a downstream issue of it? I agree from what you said to us earlier, NIS, we know that the standards are there. What I've learned from this discussion is that maybe the enforcement is not as strong as we would have wanted it to be. What is the impact of that lack of enforcement in your opinion?
Yeah, so I think, to be honest with you, you've actually, in my own opinion, you've answered the question. Yes, so if you do your environmental impact analysis very well, you do your soil test, and then you apply the standards. Ideally, if you bury the pipe, because it's not exposed, people will most likely not going to tamper with it. But don't also forget that these pipes, a lot of them have been built for years and years
40, 50
and
years.
Yes. And at the time, probably the idea was, this is bushy area, this is swamp. Let's quickly do something and start producing, So now that people find a way to vandalize these pipes and get the content out, so it might also be it might be very expensive to now wake up now and start burying the pipes. But don't also forget that we have a lot of pipes running underground. There are a whole lot of them, because you won't see pipes running across the road, and all of that. But the thing also comes down to a lot of other economic issues, right? Why would somebody go and bust a pipe if he's busy, if he has work to do, he's tired? He wouldn't do that. Yeah. So and in terms of leak detection, I think there's a lot being said, there's a lot being done as well to try and do this. But you think of this, Ade. If I puncture a pipeline, right, I do hot tapping, and I puncture a pipeline and I'm taking crude out of it and I'm pumping water into it, how would you know?
How will I know?
Yes, think of that. So the leak detection works mostly on pressure drop, right?
Yeah, pressure drop, exactly.
So
pressure drop issue.
So if I can pressurize that line, right? As I'm taking the crude out, you are putting water in it. You will know over time, but you may not know easily. And I can tell you that's happening.
I see. Okay. Now, Fisi, let's hello, Fisayo.
So the people that are doing this are also knowledgeable. Guys out there who so they are also knowledgeable, right? You wouldn't see them going to access a gas pipeline because it's dangerous.
It's dangerous, yes.
They know they know the color code. They wouldn't do that. So it's mostly liquid, hydrocarbon liquid.
That they are, yes. Low pressure lines that they are affecting. I see. Okay. Now, so bottom line this for us then, Fisayo.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
so,
you water back into it to pressurize it, to give them. So it's challenging.
I see. All right. So there's still a bit of delay.
I think I've lost you again.
Yes, you've lost me. There's still a bit of delay. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I wanted you to bottom line for us.
I can hear you now.
Yes. You work for an IOC. Many of our friends work for IOCs and NOCs around. Yeah. National oil companies, international oil companies. What can we as NNPC or National Oil Company of Nigeria, what can we learn in terms of design and standards from our counterparts who are NOC, IOCs? What can we learn to make our technical standards better in Nigeria? I think this is my last question.
Yeah. There's a lot that can be done, to be honest. We can learn from people who have done it successfully. And I think that's the best way of learning. We can learn from Norway. Norway is doing this very well, right? I think it could be nice if we build our own standards. Let's look at it from this point. And we say, okay, everyone operating in Nigeria should adopt those standards.
Correct.
And we tailor those standards to our environment. And I'm going to give a typical instance and to say that even as a country, we'll gain from it economically, we'll gain from it in terms of confidence. So let's look at it from this point. If we take, for instance, we build up some standards to say, if you are buying crude oil export pumps, this is the specifications. Of course, there could be several, but you can have specifications to say, for instance, this is what we're going to do with the crude oil export pumps, right? We can go ahead and also contact manufacturers of these pumps, have frame agreement with them. And with that, we can control the price a bit. That also will also determine, because it's the same thing we are all going to buy, regardless of which company.
Correct.
So that will also determine the amount of money we spend on spares, right? So if company A buys pump, they will stock certain percentage of spares to maintain that pump. You will do the same. Another company B will do the same. So we spend so much money buying what we may not use at the end of the day. But if we have such a specification, we can say, okay, you don't all need to buy spares all over the place. We can define what level of spares we need for the whole nation for that kind of specifications. Then we can then go and they can even choose, NNPC can choose to stock the spares. Then we buy from them. When you need it, you call for it.
You call for them.
So, and these standards, they sell it as well. They sell it to people. They sell it to this company. They make money, right? When they develop it, they make money from it. And when they revise the standards, because standards are meant to be modified as things are changing, as things are evolving. And when they modify these standards, they can insist that we've made changes to these standards. We need to then train you on what has changed. We need to inform you, and you have to pay for the training. They make money as well. And they train the trainers as well. They train the trainers. They recruit more people to do this, to go around and do and to go around and train people on what has changed in the previous standard that has been developed. As well, this same set of people will ensure they enforce the standard. You know, with this, you probably pay less for the pumps. You have frame agreement with the manufacturer. You control the price to say, look, we are going to be buying from you. So you manufacture to this spec, and this is what we'll be paying. Then you maintain this right level of spares. We don't need to buy all over the place. With this, it will go a long way. It's easier for everyone. You spend less, you make more money. You know, I think it's something that has to be dealt with and controlled. Like the people that have done it successfully have done it. We need to learn and do the same.
do the same.
Yeah.
Mr. Fisayo, thank you so much for your time tonight. Well, I've learned quite a bit from our discussion tonight. One, for us, yes, we have the NIS standard. We can build on top of that. We need to do more enforcement. There's a need for us to do standardization across the industry. We can learn from people like Norway and apply the same in our own industry. In doing so, it will help us to reduce costs. We can generate more money from it. But most importantly, apply the standards and ensure enforcement. I thank you so much for the time that you have had with us tonight. Thank you very much, and speak to you again.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ade. Thanks for having me. It's been a very good, useful discussions. I really appreciate spending some time with you. Yeah, look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye.